The universe was quiet that morning when the alien ships appeared above Earth. Nobody on the planet knew they were coming, but deep underground in a secret base in South Korea, Colonel Kim Tae-min was watching his screens with growing worry. "Sir, we've got 12 massive objects moving toward Earth," whispered Lieutenant Park Soo-jin, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "They're huge, bigger than anything we've ever seen." Tae-min nodded slowly. He'd been waiting for this day for 15 years, ever since that strange crash in the mountains near Seoul. The world thought it was just another meteor, but Tae-min knew better. That wasn't a rock that fell from space. It was a ship. And inside, that ship were technologies that changed everything. Far above Earth, Admiral Velthar was feeling pretty confident. His massive warship, the Dominion's Fist, led a fleet of 12 vessels from the hegemony of Free Yasari. They called themselves HFY for short, and they were used to getting their way. In the past 1,000 years, they had visited 847 different worlds, and every single one had surrendered within 3 days. "Another primitive world," said Science Officer Mordek, looking at his readings. "They've got basic nuclear weapons, simple rockets, and they still use radio waves to communicate. This should be easy." The HFY had a simple system. They would arrive at a planet, demonstrate their superior technology by destroying a few military targets, and then give the locals a choice: join the HFY empire peacefully, or be conquered by force. It always worked. Always. But Earth was different, and they were about to find out why. Down in the underground facility, Tae-min was coordinating, with similar bases around the world. Hidden beneath major cities, these secret installations had been built using technology that officially didn't exist. The crashed alien ship had given humanity a 15-year head start, and they had used every minute of it. Tokyo base reports. "Ready," said Park Soo-jin. "London, Moscow, and New York are all online. The shield generators are powered up and waiting." Dr. Lee Hee-jin, Earth's lead scientist on alien technology, watched her screens with nervous excitement. For years, she had been reverse engineering the alien tech, learning how it worked, and most importantly, figuring out how to make it better. The aliens built their technology to be efficient and predictable. Humans built theirs to be flexible and surprising. "Remember," she told her team, "they think we're primitives. Let them keep thinking that as long as possible." Admiral Velthar began his standard intimidation display. His fleet moved into position above Earth's major cities, their weapons charging with enough power to level entire mountain ranges. This was usually when the primitive species started begging for mercy. Instead, something impossible happened. The first plasma blast from the Dominion's Fist was aimed at what their sensors identified as a military installation in Colorado. The blast should have vaporized everything within a 50-mile radius. Instead, it hit an invisible barrier and simply stopped. The energy swirled around in a perfect sphere, contained by some kind of shield that their instruments said couldn't exist. "What just happened?" demanded Velthar, staring at his tactical display in confusion. Before Mordek could answer, the impossible became unthinkable. The contained plasma blast suddenly reversed direction and shot back at the HFY fleet with twice the power they had fired. The energy struck the Dominion's Fist and tore through its shields like they were made of paper. Warning alarms screamed throughout the alien flagship as damage reports flooded in. Half their forward weapons were destroyed, and their main shield generator was offline. In 1,000 years of conquest, nothing like this had ever happened. "How are they doing this?" shouted Mordek, frantically checking his instruments. "Their technology shouldn't be capable of generating shield harmonics beyond our theoretical models." On Earth, engineer Park Min-ho was grinning as he watched the alien ship reel from the counterattack. "Their mistake was assuming we'd use their technology the way they built it," he explained to his team. "They designed those shield generators to absorb energy and disperse it safely. We figured out how to absorb it and fire it back." The HFY tried again, this time targeting what appeared to be a communications array. The same thing happened. Their weapons were absorbed, amplified, and returned with devastating effect. 3 more HFY ships took critical damage before Admiral Velthar ordered his fleet to stop firing. "This is impossible," he muttered, staring at the tactical display. "We're fighting primitives with nuclear weapons and chemical rockets. How are they using technology more advanced than ours? The answer was simple, though the aliens couldn't see it yet. Humanity had spent 15 years studying alien technology, but they hadn't just copied it. They had improved it, modified it, and combined it with human ingenuity in ways the original designers never imagined. As the HFY fleet regrouped and tried to understand what had gone wrong, Colonel Tayman smiled grimly. The aliens thought they were dealing with primitives who had gotten lucky. They had no idea that every primitive installation on Earth was actually a carefully disguised fortress, that every simple communication array was part of a planetary defense network, and that the backward species they had come to conquer had been preparing for this exact moment for 15 years. The HFY had made their first mistake. They had underestimated humanity. It would not be their last. The emergency meeting in Seoul was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Presidents, prime ministers, and military leaders from every major nation sat around a holographic table, watching real-time footage of alien ships hovering above their cities. But the most important person in the room wasn't a politician or a general. It was Dr. Lee Hae-jin, a quiet scientist who had been living with the world's biggest secret for 15 years. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. "What I'm going to tell you will sound impossible, but every word is true. We've been in contact with alien technology since 2009. The room erupted in shocked whispers, but Dr. Lee continued. "The crash in the Korean mountains wasn't a meteor. It was a scout ship from an alien species called the Velnari. They were fleeing from something called the HFY, and they gave us a warning before they died. They told us that conquerors would come, and when they did, we needed to be ready." She activated the holographic display, showing images that made everyone gasp. Underground facilities stretching for miles, ships that looked like they belonged in science fiction movies, and weapons that glowed with otherworldly energy. "For 15 years we've been preparing," Dr. Lee explained. "We reverse-engineered their technology, but we didn't just copy it. We made it better. We made it human." Captain Nam Ho-seok, Earth's first interstellar pilot, stood up to address the stunned leaders. "Their ships are fast, but they follow predictable patterns. Our ships are slower on paper, but they can change direction in ways that should be impossible. We took their gravitic drives and combined them with human intuition. They build by the book. We build by inspiration." Meanwhile, high above Earth, Admiral Velthar was having the worst day of his very long military career. His science officer, Mordek, was frantically running diagnostics on every system they had. "Sir, it doesn't make sense," Mordek reported, his voice filled with confusion. "We're jamming their communication systems, but somehow they're still coordinating perfectly. We're targeting their power grids, but their defenses are actually getting stronger." What the aliens didn't understand was that humanity had learned to think differently about technology. While the HFY built specialized systems for specific purposes, humans had learned to make everything work together in unexpected ways. In the underground facility beneath Seoul, engineer Park Min-ho was demonstrating this principle in real time. "Watch this," he told his team as he connected an alien power core to what looked like an old car engine. "They use these quantum resonance chambers to power their ships. We figured out they also make excellent backup generators for our manufacturing plants." The improvised system hummed to life, providing enough power to run an entire city block. Around the world, similar scenes were playing out as human engineers combined alien technology with everyday items in ways that defied every rule of proper engineering. The HFY tried cutting off Earth's satellite network, expecting to blind the planet's defenses. Instead, they discovered that humans had been using quantum entanglement communicators disguised as cell phone towers. Every attempt to disrupt Earth's communications only revealed new layers of technology that shouldn't exist. "They're using our own quantum fields against us," reported Mordek in disbelief. "Sir, they've turned their entire planet into a single integrated defense system. Every power plant, every communication array, every transportation network is connected. When we attack one part, the whole planet adapts." Dr. Lee Hae-jin smiled as she watched the alien fleet's increasingly desperate attempts to disable Earth's Defenses. The beautiful thing about human engineering, she explained to her team, is that we don't just solve problems. We solve problems we didn't even know we had yet. The aliens had built their technology to be efficient and reliable, following strict protocols that had worked for thousands of years. But humans had taken that same technology and asked a simple question: what if we tried something different? Chucked. Results were spectacular. Human-modified shield generators that could absorb any type of energy and convert it to power. Communication systems that used the attacker's own jamming signals to boost their range. Weapons that got more powerful the more they were attacked. Lieutenant Park Soo-jin monitored the alien fleet's movements from her command post. "Sir, they're pulling back," she reported to Colonel Kim Tae-min. "I think they're starting to realize they're not fighting primitives anymore." But the most important realization was yet to come. As the HFY fleet regrouped and tried to understand their situation, they made a disturbing discovery. Earth's technology wasn't just advanced, it was adaptive. Every time they tried a new attack, the humans found a way to counter it within minutes. "It's like they're learning faster than our computers can calculate," Mordek reported with growing alarm. "Sir, I don't think these are primitives who got lucky. I think these are primitives who've been planning this for a very long time." Admiral Velthar stared at the blue planet below, realizing that everything he thought he knew about warfare had just become obsolete. The HFY had conquered 847 worlds using overwhelming force and superior technology, but they had never faced an enemy that could take their own weapons and make them better. For the first time in 1,000 years, the mighty HFY fleet was afraid. They weren't just fighting humans. They were fighting human creativity, and that was something no amount of superior technology could prepare them for. The war was just beginning, and Earth was ready. The launch bays beneath the Pacific Ocean opened, like the jaws of some ancient sea monster. Commander Lee Jae-wook felt his heart pounding as he watched dozens of ships rise from the hidden underwater facility. These weren't the sleek, perfect vessels the aliens were used to seeing. These were human ships, and they looked like they'd been built in someone's garage by a bunch of crazy inventors. "Remember, everyone," Jae-wook's voice crackled through the communication system to the other pilots. "They think in terms of textbook maneuvers and overwhelming firepower. We think in terms of doing whatever works, even if it shouldn't." His ship, the Soul's Fury, was a perfect example of human engineering philosophy. Where alien ships were designed for one specific job, human ships were designed to be whatever they needed to be at any given moment. The weapons could become shield generators, the engines could become power sources, and the cargo bay could launch fighters or deploy repair drones. Lieutenant Choi So-young piloted her modified interceptor through the formation of massive alien ships, grinning despite the danger. Her ship was tiny compared to the HFY vessels, but it moved like a hummingbird among elephants, turning their own gravity manipulators into speed boosters. She reported cheerfully over the radio. "Physics textbooks say this shouldn't work, but apparently physics needs to study harder." The alien ships tried to target her, but her movements were completely unpredictable. She would suddenly change direction in ways that should have turned her into paste, spin upside down while firing backwards, and use the enemy's own gravitational fields to slingshot around their ships. Admiral Velthar watched in horror as his perfectly organized battle formation fell apart. "How are they moving like that?" he demanded. "Their ship should be torn apart by those maneuvers." What the aliens didn't understand was that humans had taken their inertial dampening technology and completely reimagined it. Instead of just canceling out dangerous forces, human ships used those forces as weapons. They turned physics into their ally instead of their enemy. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. HFY ships fired massive energy beams that could destroy planets, but human ships simply absorbed the energy and used it to power even bigger weapons. When the aliens tried to ram them, human ships somehow became incorporeal at the last second, passing through solid matter like ghosts. "Sir, this is impossible," reported Science Officer Mordek, his voice filled with panic. "They're using our own technology in ways that violate the basic laws of engineering. Their ships are reconfiguring themselves in the middle of battle, Commander." Lee Jae-wook was doing exactly that. As his ship took fire from 3 directions, He activated a sequence that transformed the Soul's Fury from a fighter into a mobile fortress. The wings folded inward, the hull expanded, and suddenly he had enough firepower to take on a battleship. The thing about human engineering, he explained to his crew as they returned fire, is that we don't just think outside the box. We turn the box inside out, paint it purple, and use it as a hat. But the real surprise came when the human fleet began liberating the first HFY-controlled world. The planet Velkar had been under alien rule for 3 centuries, its people forced to mine rare minerals for the Empire. The Velkari had never seen anything like the human ships that suddenly appeared in their sky. Captain Yoon Dahai led the liberation force, but she didn't come with weapons and demands. She came with something the Velkari had never experienced: an offer of genuine friendship. "We're not here to replace your masters," she told the stunned Velkari council through a translator. "We're here to help you become free. No conditions, no tribute, no rules except one. We treat each other with respect." The Velkari couldn't believe it. In their entire history, every powerful species had either conquered them or ignored them. Nobody had ever offered to help them without asking for something in return. "Why?" asked Elder Veltani, the oldest member of their council. "What do you gain from our freedom?" Captain Yoon smiled. "Friends are always better than slaves. Friends help each other. Friends make each other stronger. We've learned that the best way to protect ourselves is to make sure everyone around us is safe and happy too." The concept was revolutionary. Within days, news of the human approach spread across the HFY Empire. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years began talking to each other. Slave worlds started planning rebellions. The rigid hierarchy that had held the empire together for millennia began to crack. The HFY tried to stop the spread of what they called the human infection, but it was too late. The idea of cooperation instead of domination was more contagious than any weapon. Planets that had never communicated before were suddenly sharing resources and knowledge. Lieutenant Choi So-young, now commanding her own liberation fleet, couldn't help but laugh as she watched another HFY world switch sides. "They spent so much time learning how to conquer people," she said. "They forgot how to make friends. We've been making friends our whole lives." The war was turning into something the HFY had never experienced, a battle of ideas instead of weapons. And humanity was winning not by being stronger, but by being kinder. They were proving that the greatest weapon in the universe wasn't superior technology or overwhelming force. It was hope. As more and more worlds joined the growing rebellion, Admiral Velthar realized that his empire wasn't just losing a war, it was losing its reason to exist. The humans had introduced a concept that threatened everything the HFY had built: the idea that civilization could exist without conquest, that strength could come from cooperation instead of domination. The galaxy was changing, and there was no going back. The Great Council Chamber of the HFY had never seen anything like this before. For over 1,000 years, the 12 founding species had met in perfect harmony, united in their belief that the strong should rule the weak. But today, everything was falling apart. Ambassador Telnara of the Kryn species slammed her hands on the crystalline table, her anger echoing through the vast chamber. "Explain to me," she hissed, "how our greatest battle fleet was defeated by primitives flying modified cargo ships." The other ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The reports from the front lines were impossible to believe, yet they kept coming. Entire star systems were switching sides. Species that had been loyal subjects for centuries were suddenly declaring independence. And at the center of it all were the humans, spreading their dangerous ideas like wildfire. "The humans have introduced a concept we've never encountered," admitted Ambassador Korthek of the Yasari Empire, his tentacles writhing with frustration. "They call it cooperation. Instead of conquering worlds, they're making allies. Instead of demanding tribute, they're offering help." "Impossible," snorted Ambassador Veldorn. "Cooperation is inefficient. The strong lead, the weak follow. That's how civilization works." But even as he spoke, another report arrived. The mining world of Torek had just expelled their HFY overseers, and declared themselves a free world under human protection. The Toraki, who had been quiet slaves for 500 years, were suddenly building their own ships and joining the rebellion. On Earth, diplomat Han Woo-jin was working around the clock in the newly established Galactic Relations Center. His team had set up communication networks that bypassed all HFY monitoring, allowing oppressed species to talk to each other for the first time in centuries. The beautiful thing, he explained to his exhausted staff, is that we don't have to convince anyone to rebel. We just have to show them that rebellion is possible. The results were extraordinary. Species that had been bitter enemies were discovering they had more in common than they'd ever imagined. The Kryn and the Veltari, who had fought a bloody war 3 centuries ago, were now sharing medical knowledge. The aquatic Mordani were teaching the desert-dwelling Zerathi how to purify water, while the Zerathi shared their advanced solar collection technology. It's like they were all trapped in separate rooms, observed Dr. Kim Min-jung, Earth's lead xenopsychologist. The HFY kept them apart so they couldn't realize they were stronger together than they were alone. The Empire's response was predictable, but desperate. They tried to cut off communication between rebel worlds, but human quantum relays made that impossible. They attempted to blockade systems that had declared independence, but their fleets were spread too thin across too many rebellions. For every world they managed to retake, 3 more would rebel. Major Kim Sung-ho monitored the situation from Earth's orbital defense platform. The readings on his screens told an incredible story. HFY ships were deserting their own fleets, their crews deciding they'd rather join the rebellion than fight for an empire that was crumbling around them. "Sir," reported sensor operator Lee Mi-young, "we're getting surrender requests from individual HFY vessels faster than we can process them. Half their fleet seems to want to switch sides." But the Yasari Empire, the most powerful member of the HFY, wasn't ready to give up. Emperor Zarkoth made a decision that would change everything. If they couldn't stop the rebellion through conventional warfare, they would target its source directly. "Prepare the extinction fleet," he commanded his admirals. "We will destroy the human homeworld and end this madness once and for all." The largest armada in galactic history began moving toward Earth. Every remaining HFY warship, every planetary defense platform, every weapon of mass destruction they possessed was pointed at the small blue planet that had dared to challenge their authority. Ambassador Shin Yu-jin received the intelligence report in her office at the Free World's embassy. The numbers were staggering. Nearly 10,000 ships, carrying enough firepower to crack planets in half, were heading straight for Earth. "They're coming with everything they have," she told the Emergency Council. "This isn't a battle fleet. This is an extinction event." But humanity had one more surprise waiting for the HFY. As the massive alien armada approached the solar system, they found something that shouldn't have been possible. Earth wasn't alone. Ships from over 200 different species had gathered around the small planet. Former HFY subjects, newly freed worlds, and ancient civilizations that had been hiding from the Empire for millennia had all come to stand with humanity. The rebels had become an alliance, and the alliance had become an army. Captain Park Hyun-woo, commanding the Defense Coordination Center, couldn't help but smile as he watched the readings. "They thought they were coming to destroy one world," he said to his crew. "Instead, they're facing the entire galaxy." The HFY had spent 1,000 years teaching the galaxy that might made right, that the strong naturally dominated the weak. But humanity had taught them something different. They had shown the galaxy that cooperation was stronger than conquest, that making friends was more powerful than making enemies. As the 2 fleets prepared for the final battle, everyone knew that more than just Earth's survival was at stake. This would determine whether the galaxy would continue under the old system of domination and fear, or embrace a new future built on cooperation and mutual respect. The HFY had created an empire through force and intimidation. But they were about to learn that empires built on fear always fall to those built on hope. The final battle was about to begin, and the galaxy was watching. The massive HFY fleet had never looked more terrifying. 10,000 warships stretched across space like a metal storm cloud, their weapons charged and ready to turn Earth into cosmic dust. Emperor Zarkoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the small blue planet through the viewing screen. "This ends today," he declared to his admirals. "We will erase this world and its dangerous ideas from existence. The galaxy will remember what happens to those who challenge the HFY." But as the alien armada moved closer to Earth, something extraordinary happened. Ships began appearing around the planet like stars coming out at sunset. Not just human ships, but vessels from hundreds of different worlds. The Kryn brought their bioships that looked like living creatures. The Veltari arrived with crystal, vessels that sparkled like diamonds. The aquatic Mordani came in ships that moved like swimming dolphins through space. Ambassador Kang Ji-hoon stood in the newly built Unity Station, orbiting Earth alongside representatives from 347 different species. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built using technology and knowledge shared freely by dozens of civilizations. "Your Majesty Zarkoth," he said, his voice broadcasting across all frequencies. "We're not here to fight you. We're here to offer you the same thing we've offered everyone else, a chance to join us as equals." The Emperor's laugh was cold and bitter. "Equals? We have ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years. We don't negotiate with primitives and their slaves." "That's where you're wrong," replied Ambassador Kang calmly. "There are no slaves here. There are no masters. There are only beings who have chosen to work together because we're stronger united than we are divided." President Park Hee-won of Earth's United Government stepped forward. Around her stood leaders from worlds that had been enemies just months ago, now working together as partners in the Free Worlds Alliance. "Your empire was built on fear," she said, her words reaching every ship in both fleets. "You taught the galaxy that the strong must dominate the weak, that cooperation was weakness, that different species could never truly work together. You were wrong about all of it. The proof was everywhere around them. The Zerathi, masters of solar technology, had shared their knowledge with the ice world Frostari, who had developed new ways to store and distribute energy. The warrior Thurvak had learned healing techniques from the peaceful Luminari, while the Luminari had gained new ways to protect their worlds from the Thurvak military traditions. Dr. Chang Soo-jin, now director of the Galactic Innovation Network, had established research centers where beings from hundreds of worlds worked together on problems that had puzzled individual species for centuries. "We're not just sharing technology," she explained to the assembled representatives. "We're sharing ideas, perspectives, and ways of thinking that none of us could have developed alone. A Kryn biologist working with a human engineer, and a Veltari mathematician can solve problems that none of them could handle by themselves." The results were incredible. Medical breakthroughs that saved billions of lives. Energy systems that could power entire star systems without pollution. Transportation, networks that connected distant worlds in ways that seemed like magic. Agricultural techniques that could feed any population on any world. But the most impressive achievement was something that couldn't be measured in numbers or technology. It was the simple fact that former enemies had become friends, that species that had never trusted each other were now working side by side. Emperor Zarkoth watched this display with growing unease. His intelligence officers had reported increasing desertion rates among his own forces. Ships that had served the HFY for centuries were switching sides, their crews deciding they preferred cooperation to conquest. "Sir," reported Admiral Morthek, nervously, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 more vessels. The crews say they want to join the Free Worlds Alliance." The Emperor's rage was volcanic. "Open fire on the deserters. Anyone who abandons the HFY dies." But when the order was given, something unprecedented happened. Most of the HFY fleet simply refused to obey. Captains who had followed orders without question for decades suddenly found themselves unable to fire on their own people. The rigid hierarchy that had held the Empire together for a millennium cracked and then shattered completely. "We won't fire on our own," declared Captain Velsarin of the HFY vessel, Iron Fist. "And we won't destroy worlds full of innocent people just to preserve an empire built on fear." One by one, HFY ships began powering down their weapons and requesting permission to join the alliance. The mighty fleet that had come to destroy Earth was dissolving before everyone's eyes. Ambassador Li Sunghuan, Earth's representative to the new Galactic Council, made one final offer to the Emperor. "Your Majesty, your empire is over. But that doesn't mean you have to be. We're offering you the same thing we've offered everyone else, membership in something better. A place where your people's knowledge and experience can help build a galaxy where everyone prospers." The Emperor stared at the impossible scene before him. His 1,000-year empire was crumbling, not through conquest or destruction, but through something he had never considered possible: voluntary transformation. His subjects weren't being forced to change sides, they were choosing to. In the end, the HFY's greatest enemy wasn't superior weapons or overwhelming force. It was hope. The simple, revolutionary idea that different beings could work together, that strength came from cooperation rather than domination, that the galaxy was big enough for everyone to prosper. The war ended not with explosions and death, but with former enemies shaking hands and making plans for a better future. Emperor Zarkoth, stripped of his fleet but offered dignity and purpose, eventually accepted membership in the alliance. His people's advanced mathematics and organizational skills became valuable contributions to galactic civilization. Within 5 years, the Free Worlds Alliance had grown to include over 3,000 species. Earth became the diplomatic heart of this new civilization, not because humans had conquered the galaxy, but because they had shown it how to conquer fear, hatred, and division. The humans had achieved something that would be remembered forever. They had won a war by convincing their enemies to become their friends, and in doing so, they had transformed the galaxy into something better than anyone had dared to imagine.